All right. Cool. Hey, everybody. It's John Barrows with J Barrows Consulting. Make it happen Mondays. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am psyched to be with my good guest and good friend of mine, Ben Sardella. There we go. Ben Sardella. How's it going, Ben? What you been up to?
Good morning, John. Happy Patriots Day after a crazy win Monday.
Yeah, so for those who just listen, both Ben and I are huge Patriots fans, obviously, and I'm going to say I'm sorry to the rest of the NFL. Like, I know y'all hate us, and rightfully so. That was a total touchdown. I mean, let me ask you, Ben, do you think that was a touchdown?
Yeah, so I was actually having an argument at the time with my friends watching it, who are all diehard Patriots fans, and I was saying that's a touchdown because it broke the plane while he had control. I think the rule is absolutely crazy when you can do all these nutty things as a runner, but as a receiver, you have to do this like process of coming down and all of that stuff. I think it's insane that they have the rule the way they do, but we didn't break it this time, at least. Played by it, won by it. So what are you going to do, right?
Exactly. You know, it's like, I just feel, the tuck rule and all these different things, it's like they all seem to go our way. So I'll take it, but I will say if I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan right now, I would be rip-roaring pissed off.
Yeah. Well, there's still a couple games to play, so who knows? But it's looking good. Lined up for the playoffs at least now.
Cool. Well, I appreciate. Let's not bore the audience because they'll probably shut down right after they start listening to this. But I wanted to chat with you because last week or the past couple of weeks we've had this sales thought leader of the year type of award, and it kind of came out of nowhere, right? Inside Sales and those guys put it together. And I didn't even really know I was nominated for it, and so I wanted to talk with you today about. And so for those of you who don't know, Ben took first place. I thought I was winning because I wanted to beat Grant Cardone, and all of a sudden I thought I was sitting pretty, and somebody was like, "Nah," I would scroll down all the way to the bottom. I see Ben just kicking ass. God damn it! So I want to talk to you about first of all how you engage with your network, because I think that's important, but also thought leadership, because I think I put a post out there a little while ago on LinkedIn that said, like, what does actually thought leadership mean to you? And I got a whole bunch of different answers. And I'm also, I don't know if you've been noticing it, but I'm seeing a big, like, not a big, but I'm starting to see creeps of like backlash on quote unquote thought leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I wanted, because I'm starting to see, there was a while ago where SDRs were starting to get shit on all over the place. Like, people were like, "Oh, these shitty SDRs, these emails are crap," and that kind of toned down for a little bit. And now I'm starting to see this trend of like, who the hell do you think you are, thought leader, whatever. So talk a little bit about kind of like, when you personally, actually, let's start with this. Why don't you kind of give us, the audience, a quick update on kind of where you came, and then you started a couple of companies. Now you're at Outbound Work. So give us that history, and then I want to back into that and say, when did kind of the social selling thought leader click for you? And then we'll talk about updates. So give us that little background from where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had just some I had some very fortunate luck happen to me right when I was a senior in college. I went to Boston University. It was 2000. I had come out to California for spring break with my roommate on a last second trip, and ended up meeting his aunt and roommate, who the aunt's roommate ran sales, customer success, marketing, and business development at NetSuite at the time.
Oh, wow. Nice.
But they didn't have any salespeople yet. They were sort of trying to figure out the model. It was super early on. And so I inevitably became the first sales rep at NetSuite. And I spent about 5 to 6 years there. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I knew you were there. I didn't know you were the first. Shit.
Yeah, and I had a great run. I got to open the UK office there. I got to help open the Toronto office, and just had a really nice run with doing that. And then from there, what I learned, though, once I saw the equity positions of the leadership, I said, you know what, coming in from college, I'm never going to be retire with this gig. I need to go, kind of create my own path here. So that's what I went off and did, and tried to get up the ladder to the VP level as quickly as I could. And really where the culmination of me wanting to sort of go after that thought leadership side of things, build up some content and brand, and the entrepreneur side all came together at Kissmetrics, which was my first VP of sales gig. Got to work with Neil Patel and Heaton Shah, who are just masterminds at, personal brand, content generation, and all of that. And I was looking at what they were doing and saying, great, I think there's a vacuum here for sales. And how could I kind of be a part of that. And as I was doing that, all of a sudden, that vacuum got filled with so many awesome folks in the space. And, I was lucky to sort of be around the sales hackers and things like that as they were starting to really come to fruition.
Yeah. So was it a conscious, I mean, did you kind of identify it, was it a conscious thing where you saw that vacuum and you were like, you know what, I'm going to start moving in that direction and I'm going to start doing this because of what Patel was doing and all those other things? Or was it just kind of a gradual thing where you were doing it, whether consciously or subconsciously, like you were kind of putting stuff out there because that's just kind of who you are? Or did you hit a point where you were like, you know what, I got to start putting stuff out there because I want people to start following me, those type of things?
Yeah, what happened was it wasn't that I don't put a lot of stuff out there usually. I mean, I support putting stuff out there with the marketing teams I run, and at Data Naz, we had a great content engine. We're doing the same at Outbound Works and starting to build that up. But what I was doing and what I was seeing was a lot of, first off, I was building really great teams, and those teams were adopting the processes I was putting in place. And so I was getting some folks to follow me from company to company as well. And so I started to see that I was able to build some type of leadership, awareness with those folks. But then the next thing that happened was I was starting to get asked to be an advisor. And once I became an advisor at Yesware, was sort of the first sort of big name, as Yesware kind of took off right away in the early days. That created some awareness about what I was doing. And then some other entrepreneurs would come in and say, hey, can you help with our company? And that just started to build up my network pretty significantly from there.
And what's your philosophy on it? Is it, because I'll tell you mine from a context standpoint. When I went off on my own with Jay Barrows specifically, I always knew kind of like I wanted to, as a sales trainer, I kind of felt like I had to start putting good content out there because I wanted people to see the value of my content and therefore obviously buy, the same day stuff, whatever. So that's why I started putting it out there. But where it really struck me was when I went off on my own with Jay Barrows, and I got all these people reaching out to me being like, oh, just give us your Twitter handle and we'll get you like 10,000 Twitter followers in a couple of months or something like that. And I remember just inherently being like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would I want 10,000 random ass people following me on Twitter? And I'm a big fan of like the Gary Vee mentality of, look, you could have 10 million followers, but if you tweet something out and nobody does anything, I'd rather have 10 followers. And if I tweet something out or post something, 10 of them engage, right?
Yeah.
So you have kind of an overarching philosophy on, like you said, you don't share a lot, you don't put a lot of stuff out there, but you kind of have your own approach to this. Is there kind of a standard of the philosophy you have around social selling, brand building that the audience could kind of start to take maybe pieces of for their own?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're putting stuff out there just to put it out there and keep the frequency up, it's probably not a great approach because you're really watering down what you're trying to get out there, right? I think if you put stuff out there that actually has some meaning to it, and then you have some follow-on pieces that sort of continue to drive that home, I think you're onto something. And so what I see a lot of people doing is just write to write. I've got to get out a blog post this week because it's this week and I don't have a blog post out yet. And I think when you start doing that, people tend to disengage at a certain point. Versus if once you get something out there and it has some meaning to it, and maybe you don't put out something for another month or another 2 months, but once it comes out there again, you'll start to see that people gravitate to that. I also think it's the format, right? What format you pick is kind of interesting as well. So for instance, we did the Stories from the Sales Floor podcast. And not only that, we kind of had a different type of format with that podcast where it wasn't just me interviewing you in a one-on-one format for 30 to 45 minutes. And, and that was the John Barrows interview podcast. It was more like, let me ask you a question. I'm going to interview you and ask you a bunch of questions, and then I'm going to make each question its own episode. And that way people could consume those episodes in a way where they might not want to consume all the episodes, but if they had a specific question and we had covered that question in the podcast, then they were able to consume that one and it was meaningful for them. So I think that matters a lot too.
Totally. I think that there's that balance though between consistency and because if your audience, if there isn't a little bit of consistency, then they tend to lose, right? I mean, one of the things I'm noticing on, and I'll just use an easy example like Snapchat, right? It's like if I don't, and Snapchat's easy because I can just get on there and be like, "What's up?" I'm hustling like that, right?
Yeah.
But if they don't see you, like I see the engagement drop down. Like if I'm not on Snapchat every single day posting something, even if it's just, "Hey, what's up, everybody?" Then, and if I don't post for like 2 weeks, I come back and my views are like zero. Blog, I think so. I think there is something to be said about consistency, but it takes a commitment. I think that's the other thing, whether you have to commit to putting content out, quality content out there in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And being somewhat, you don't have to do it every Thursday or every Monday or something like that, but it has to be something solid once a month or something like that for your audience to kind of still be like, "Ooh, there's something cool."
Yep.
And then I wanted to ask you though about like original content versus curated content. Because do you have to be, I think a lot of people look at social selling and brand building and stuff like, "Oh shit, I got to write a blog or I got to do a podcast or I got to," what's your thought process on the person that actually creates the content versus just consuming content, but then putting and I'll go back to Gary Vee, context around that content?
Yeah, I think there's, when it comes to actual content, I think I've been a much better curator of really great content and then being able to make sure that gets distributed to the right folks in the right format versus me kind of being in a lab creating the next, blog content or marketing material or whatever myself. I certainly have a team that I work with and I give them ideas and I say, "Hey, I'd like this concept. Us going down this path. Here's some really great stuff that's been written about account-based sales development over the last 6 months. Let's pull some things out. Let's see what the trends are. Let's pull some people. Let's get their opinions and let's see what's really happening here." Because a lot of times those content pieces that you're seeing, there's ambition built behind those things, right? They're obviously out there trying to sell something to you, right? And they're going to sort of drive the story in their own way. So I think it does help to have, some folks that are curators of all of this noise that's out there. I also think there's just too much out there nowadays as well. We went from nothing to like everyone wants to, have some type of format to deliver. So I think that's it. I think the other thing that I see as thought leaders that I think, as I was kind of researching this too, like what is a thought leader? What, all of that. I mean, look, I was interested in winning because I want Outbound Works to get on the map a little bit, right? But at the same time, I want some respect for the peers that I'm working with. I just wanted to be on that list with you guys, to be quite honest, because that's a pretty cool group to be on with. But but I also think what we ignore sometimes is just the people that are actually out there doing the real like new like breaking new barriers, creating new paths to doing things that have sort of never really been done before and never really been focused on. I'll give you an example. So the previous company we started was DataNice. And so DataNice, there were a couple of companies out there that were doing things around technographics, figuring out who's using what tech. But we really built the story around using that information to actually prospect with it. And changing the habits of the reps to go do that every single day. And so I think when you do some of those things, you're going to get recognized as a thought leader, even if you're not pushing out content all the time about those types of topics.
You're spot on. I think it's super interesting. Like now that I got Morgan on board, right? Like one of the reasons I brought Morgan on board was because because
you're really fucking smart. How about that?
Besides that, he's a really fucking smart kid. But he's also on the ground floor. You know what I mean? He's the one doing he's 25 years old. He's making the calls. He's playing around with all the tools. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, like let's start playing around with, what I have him doing, which I think is super interesting. Again, I'm going to bring up Gary because Gary's he's talking about how voice is the next frontier, right? Of like the Alexas, and we're all going to have personal. And I totally believe this. Going back to prospecting, I believe that there's going to be a personal assistant Alexa next to every one of our desks. And I'm going to be able to be like, all right, you know what? Today I want to prospect into Ben Sardella over at Outbound Works. And so Alexa, tell me what I should know about Ben. And all of a sudden it's going to be or, hey, I'm about to go into a negotiation. And I'm about to meet with a CFO to talk about, negotiation on this big deal. Any tips here, Alexa? And then a voice is going to be like, well, here, try this, da, 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 da. And so what I'm having him doing, you can actually create these streams now, and it's easy, and I think it's free. And so I'm having Morgan cut up like 15, 20, or 30, like just tips right?
Yep.
Or like motivational things that we can plug into Alexa just to see what that, and that alone is putting him in a position to be like, holy shit, dude, like 99.9% of people aren't touching that in sales right now. And if he gets in on that early phase of it and then learns it, whether it works or not, it's like, okay, like that kid he's trying new shit. Like I'm gonna pay attention to him.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you this, there isn't a single company I've ever been at where I haven't been the number one salesperson. Hands down. So I'm not at Outbound Works. I'm the only salesperson right now, but we're doing really well and crushing it. So we're on pace. At Data Nice, though, I was the first sales rep and I was the number one sales rep. As we were building a team, I was still closing deals just to know what it was like, just to get that feeling. Same at Kiss Metrics. I was the only salesperson for a while, and then we started building the team around me and sort of all the way back. And I think that's really, really important as well, that, us as leaders, obviously as you get up in your, latter stages of your career, middle stages, the latter stages of your career, last thing we want to do is go back and be a salesperson again and do all the tasks and stuff. But what I'm disappointed in sometimes with a lot of sales leaders is they don't even sit on the floor with their salespeople and see what they're doing day to day, or they don't listen to calls. They don't coach right there in the moment at all. And, instead they want to play in Salesforce and run forecasting numbers and all of that stuff. And then they want to blame their salespeople at the end of the quarter when they didn't hit their numbers, but they don't want to take responsibility for not elevating their team's success to a whole nother level themselves. And so, I think that's a really important aspect to being a thought leader, is if you're too far removed from the things you're talking about, I'm sorry, but you just don't have any context anymore. And the game changes really quickly.
I mean, daily. I say that all the time. Like, for me, I always wanted to, as a sales trainer, somebody asked, when I first got into it, I'm like, I don't, when Basho first knocked on my door and said, you want to be a sales trainer? I was like, no. And they're like, why not? I was like, because most sales trainers I know suck, because they're either failed sales professionals or they're professional presenters. Right. And you can just tell when somebody they haven't done it or they haven't done it in 20 years. And one of the things, and this is a mean thing to do, but I would recommend doing it, is when you sit in a training, right? Anybody goes to like a public training or something like that, I usually let the trainer do like, a half-hour intro, whatever, get their feet wet. And then I always sit in front and I raise my hand about a half an hour and I'm like, could you do me a favor? Could you give me an example of the last time you applied what you're about to teach us and what the result was? And you'd be amazed, like 9 out of 10 of them, like deer in headlights, crickets. And then they almost always go to, well, I've been working with my customers today. I go, no. When was the last time you, and by the way, you could tell me an example and you could tell me you failed miserably. Like the guy hung up on you or kicked you out of his office, whatever. Just tell me in the past 6 months to a year that you did this. And it's most of them don't, because it's so much easier to do this. The same thing with a manager. It's so much easier to tell people how to make these phone calls and do this stuff than actually do it.
Yep.
Do you know Russ Hurl over at Google?
I do. Russ was a great customer of ours at Data Nice, and that guy builds a machine, and when he does it, and he cracks the whip. I wanted to hire him. Any team that is being run by him, you can guarantee they're going to hit a certain number of call volume. That he's got the results maxed out, like everything. Yeah, for sure.
The reason I bring him up is because I just trained his team, so I'm working with him, and that dude gets in every single morning and makes cold calls.
Yep.
Like he's running one of the big, he's running the cloud portion of Google. That Google's looking to make their second highest revenue generating division of their entire organization. It's $2 billion now. They're looking to make it like 35 or 36 billion or something like that in the next couple of years. He's hiring thousands of sales reps, and that dude, he's responsible for all this stuff. But every morning he gets up and he makes cold calls. Like, how can you not follow somebody like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you not want to get in before he does too, and already start making phone calls if you want to move up in your career? That's the other thing. I think some of the folks that are coming up, I love the ambition of the younger generation and how they believe in content's important, and they want to really share this knowledge and get in the game, and I love that aspect of it. But at the same time, I do think that something's got to be said for, being able to go and crush it yourself and actually really have results. Maybe you're not winning all the time, but having some wins under your belt, I do think is is somewhat important if you want to be considered an authority in the space.
I mean, that's why. So I'm going to go back to Morgan. Like I got him. So he was an SDR and then an SDR manager, right? And I got two things. I got filling the funnel and I got driving to close. And so what he's going to be doing here in Q1 is he's going to be using my training to go sell, right? So because he's never done full sales cycle, right? So he's only just set up meetings. He needs to now close, right?
Sure.
Because I'm not going to have him even come close to delivering the driving to close stuff until he has some stories, and I don't even mean success stories. I mean, even some, like, it's usually better to have unsuccessful stories, right? Like, oh my God, I tried to negotiate like this and the guy straight up hung up on me. Or I tried to pull the Glenn Ross close on the guy and he told me to fuck myself. And I'm on, you know what I mean? So it was like, whoa. But so I'm having him do that so that he can then gain the experience. But he's going to be delivering, filling the funnel. You know why? Because he's got credibility in the prospecting and the outbound stuff. Yep. And so, I mean, and talk about credibility, social selling, right? I mean, that the reason I hired the kid is because of his personal brand.
Yep.
And so, the challenge I have with, when you brought it up as far as the younger generation is, I do think there is like a little bit, there's an eagerness, right? Like, oh, I want to get out there and I want to share this stuff. But if you don't have it, I'm going to put myself in this bucket. You can jump in if you want to, but I look at somebody who's 22 years old, 23 years old, telling me, oh, I should be doing this stuff. If it's the social, hey, let me jump on a LinkedIn and show you how I do social selling. That's where I think can be some quote unquote thought leadership. But if you're trying to tell me how to sell, if you're trying to, same thing with challenger sale. It's like, don't you dare pull challenger sales shit with me if you're a year into business. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the tough balance, I think, of like, hey, let me share with you some stuff, but I also have to have some experience doing this stuff in order for me to tell you that this is valid in any way, right?
Totally. And, I actually used your quote about the challenger sale and in some of the things I've used before, because I just love that because it's so true. I mean, I think that the younger generation, folks just coming into it, I think they're really great at tactics. And I love being a sponge and learning from them. At Data Nice, gosh, the SDR team we had, they taught me so many new things. And of course, outreach and sales loft were kind of really blossoming around the things that they were doing around sequences that I thought was, interesting at the time. And, just seeing all of that, I also think, by the way, as thought leaders, we need to continue to be lifelong learners as part of the process as well. I think when you start thinking you're a lifelong teacher rather than a learner, then you're getting way off on the track. And I think there's some there that feel that way.
Yep.
but yeah, I totally agree with your point there as well. Yeah.
Well, and I got one more question for you that I'm kind of struggling with, which is I'm seeing these thought leaders, I guess, who are positioning themselves as thought leaders, but for instance, in social, like they're just posting stuff to, like, they've gotten to the point where, and I'm going to use Gary as a good example. Gary's still a great practitioner, right? But Gary could, if he wanted to, just sit there and create like whatever videos he wanted to, and people are still going to follow him because he's Gary V, right?
Right.
I have a hard time with those people who are out there professing about social selling and I see them on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn all the time. But I guess my question is when the last time you actually sold something because of that? And that's the thing that I'm starting to get a little bit like, okay, when was the last time somebody said, hey, that's interesting, or you instead of just posting out there to build your brand, you actually I'm going after Ben and I'm going to follow him on Twitter. I'm going to engage with some of his content because I want Outbound Works as a client. And then you then said, hey, shit, John, yeah, thanks for following me and doing all this cool stuff. Let's have this conversation. Let's sign up as a like that. Are you starting to see some of that? Or is that just me just being a pure cynic here?
No, I've actually, and what's interesting, we're starting a new podcast, and one of the questions around prospecting, you're going to be on it, by the way. One of the whole season we're doing it in seasons, and the first season's dedicated to prospecting, and one of the questions is around social selling, and we just had an answer from one of the folks I respect, tremendously in the space. And he's like, social selling is all bullshit, right? And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I 100% prescribe to just writing it off as bullshit.
Yeah.
I think there are certain people that have learned how to do it really well, and they continue to, evangelize it, and they built businesses around that. And I think that's important for some folks in some places. What I think is really challenging is understanding where your market is, and if they're not on those social platforms, then you're just wasting your time. And I found that with Twitter. To be honest, I've had I hustled to get Twitter followers.
Yeah.
I didn't buy any, but I hustled to get them. Probably 3-4 years ago, and what I started to find out is that no one was actually engaging on Twitter, right? And I think we all kind of, or at least I definitely went back to LinkedIn. It was for me, right? And now when I engage on LinkedIn, and actually how I got probably ahead on the votes, it's because I engaged directly one-on-one, and that's what I've been doing. And it's a lot of work, but it allows me a format to be able to do that, and gives me better context for who I'm trying to engage with and why than Twitter does or anything else. So yeah, I'm kind of in the middle on the social selling thing as well. It hasn't really, it's a component. It's not a end all be all strategy by any means.
No, and I think the importance, I kind of separate brand building from social selling, because I look at brand building as super important, like getting your brand out there in a very quality way, the way you want to control it, and sharing insights and context, content, all that stuff. I think that is super important. And the reason I say that is because, when we grew up, we were brand loyal, we trusted corporate brands.
Totally.
The Microsofts, the McDonald's, the Nike, that type of stuff. Whereas this generation, they don't trust corporate brands, but they do trust personal brands.
Yep.
And so that's why personal brand is going to be. Now, social selling, I think you have to be very clear with what you mean by that. As far as I'm not going to tweet you and all of a sudden get you to sign a contract. Right. But if I follow you on Twitter, I retweet you, I engage with you, I share, add value, and then I make a cold call to you. So now that's warmed up and you're like, oh shit, this is John. Or I send you that email and you're like, ooh. And so it's almost like, again, Gary Vee is like jab, 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 right hook. It's like, okay, you just want to kind of be everywhere. And then when somebody's ready to make that decision, the goal is to be top of mind. So that's where I do not think social selling is bullshit. I just think sitting there tweeting, posting all day long, thinking that you're going to make it rain because of that is bullshit, right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Cool, man. Well, we got 2 minutes left here. I always love talking to you, and again, I wanted to get you on here because I thought it was timely based on what happened last week with that thing. And I wanted to give everybody on that list credit, by the way, because most of the people definitely deserve to be on that list.
Absolutely.
And then it just became something more of just like a pride thing. Oh, fuck, I want to win. And so congrats for coming in. I got a second, but tell everybody about Outbound Works and what you're working on these days, because I know you've been super successful in building all these companies, and now you're off to the races with another one. So give us a little background of what it is, and then where people can go check it out, because I think it's a ton of value here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So at Outbound Works, we've recognized sort of a gap in the market when it comes to SDR turnover, and that's just really hard to continue to drive the set number of opportunities that you've built out of your operating plan and deliver on those when SDRs are constantly getting either promoted or you're parting ways with them because you might have mishired. And so, we're creating a consistent channel, an alternate channel. We don't necessarily envision a world without SDRs by any means, but what we do see is those SDRs being elevated into getting deeper from a personalization perspective, focusing on more higher end target accounts. A group like Outbound Works can take over a lot of the second tier type of accounts. We combine both automation and expertise to do that. So, we focus on the ICP, the right type of curated data to target the right contacts. We've got a team of expert copywriters to write sequences, and then we schedule the appointments. And, I think we're getting to a point now where with all the sales teams that have built now SDR teams, which wasn't happening a decade ago, there's just not enough talent out there to go around, and there's not enough John Barrows out there to go train them all. So when that happens, we're a good channel to drive a consistent level of ops each month. And you can find us at outboundworks.com or me, Ben Sardella on LinkedIn.
Love it, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I actually, just to reinforce where you're going, my theory on where things are going is that SDRs are going to become more and more under operations and marketing. And be more of my vision is kind of like the old school switchboard operator where they plug and play. So it's like there's going to be content created and then social, engagement pieces there. And an SDR is going to be like, all right, I'm now going after this type of client in this industry based on these things. Let me pull these things together, put them into a sequence, let it roll, and be personalized with it. Whereas the automation stuff can take care of like the tier 3 accounts, the tier 2 accounts, right?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, John, and you're at the forefront of this, but I think the time has come where we're seeing AI start to come in. We're building tools around that sort of stuff. It's not that the robots are completely going to take over anything like that, but I do think that there's going to be, a significant portion being automated and taken over. And it's time for SDRs and the folks coming up in sales to really start focusing more on their soft skills, the things that, artificial intelligence is not going to replace. So start thinking about those things, because I think if you're thinking about how to use these certain tools that keep popping up and all that stuff, you're wasting your time. It's going to get all automated anyways. And you should really be focusing on how you build relationships, how you can handle conversations and that sort of thing with the folks that you're trying to engage with and add value to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that content thing to me is relevant across the board, right? AI, the way I look at it is AI is going to make good sales reps great sales reps incredible, and average sales reps are relevant.
Right.
So if you can leverage all this and have that 20% that's that top where, yes, now it's empathy. Now it's, let me ask you that insightful question based on a little bit of homework I did versus the basic bullshit question, and then be able to take the 30 slide deck, presentation and cut it down to the 5 that are most relevant to you based on that stuff. That's really where sales reps are going to excel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome, Lynn. Well, always a pleasure. Hopefully, hopefully I'll see you in the Super Bowl. Hopefully that win made us the home field advantage. We still got to take care of business, so we got 2 games.
Absolutely. Yep. No, looking ahead. We've seen this happen before too many times. So
All right,
man.
Brother. Well, if I don't talk to you, enjoy the holidays. Have a great New Year.
All right. You too. Take care.
Man.
Yep. Bye.